it's time to roll, baby, on MMA Junkie Radio with Gorgeous George and Go. This is what we doing while we do it, baby. We rollin'!
Covering MMA from all over the world, this is the premier stop for all your combat sports needs. MMA Junkie Radio, the only show broadcasting live from the Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino in the fight capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada. The lights are on and the mics are hot. It's time to get your MMA fix, junkies. Take it away, Big John.
Gorgeous George and Goes, are you ready? Junkie Nation, are you ready? Well, let's get it on.
From the fight capital of the world, inside the beautiful Mandalay Bay Race and Sportsbook and the KOCI studios in Costa Mesa, California, you're listening to the MMA Junkie Radio Show, the only show that matters. I'm your host, Gorgeous George. With me, as always, is the devious and dastardly Goes, our East co-host. To his left, I believe, because I'm not there, is the fight analyst, Dan Tom. To Goes' right, I believe, is Richard Hunter from the Phone Booth Fighting Podcast and CBS Sports Radio. And last but not least, Jumbo Josh, producing back east. What's up, fellas?
What's going on?
Hello.
Man, not much. Not much. Last day out in California before I join you guys out in Vegas for the big March Madness week. So let me just say this real quick because I did a poor job of it last week. Last week we just kind of caught you off guard. Hey, Wednesday, we're off. This week we'll be off Thursday and Friday. And the reason is because we will just be too drunk and too intoxicated to do the show. If it was the morning show, no problem. You know, we just kind of hold off on beers, drink afterwards. But come on, 5 p.m. Pacific, at least 10 games will have gone by then. At least 20 parlays will have been won and lost by then. At least 3 or 4 rounds of shots will have been done by then. We'll be slurring our words and saying politically incorrect things, and possibly one of the two of us might get fired. So this Thursday and Friday we will be off. But we're going to have fun here on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Today we'll recap UFC London, and as noted by our friends at The Fights, Jerry Cooney and Randy Gordon, I was catching them on the way in. We will be talking to Simon Head, who covered the UFC London event for us. That'll be in the first hour, Frank Mir in the second hour, and it's going to be a fun show. So, ready to go? Guys, let's start off right at the top, man. What did you think about the huge George Masvidal KO over Darren Till at the UFC main event, UFC London main event?
Well, I want to say the three of us picked George, right?
Yep.
So we're good there. I think it's Junkie Nation that needs to call in and tell us what they think about that, because we had that one called, fellas. But you know what? I felt like the knockout blow wasn't actually his hardest punch that he threw. I thought he hit Darren with some harder punches. It just happened to catch him in the right spot, and the follow-ups were great. Man, they just look like two different people in two different weight classes. I was really thinking once that fight started, this guy might be too big for Jorge, and then Jorge getting knocked down right away. It was a fun fight. I mean, if I paid money to be in that arena that night, I would have been happy. What do you think, Danton?
Yeah, it was. It started off fun. Like I was like, oh, Jorge got knocked down, and then I'm like, wait, let's remember Jorge. Like we talked about on the show, he gets knocked down early in a lot of his fights. And something I noticed when I was looking on the tape is that he makes his read and adjust. And of course, I like you guys were kind of taken in. The crowd was a bit infectious. You know, Till was kind of having his moments, getting Jorge corralled against the cage. But then I thought I remembered that, and I'm like, you know what? I think Jorge's getting his reads, and kind of like what Ghost said, some of the harder shots came early. You know, he threw away a right hand and came back with a left hook that hit Darren Till really hard in that first round, and I think he knew that left hand was going to be there. Now he threw it from the southpaw stance to finish, and I'll be honest, you know, I called it by decision and maybe say, you know, I could see a submission and maybe an accumulative stoppage because I thought he was going to go to the body as the fight wore on, but yeah, I'm going to be honest, even though I called Masvidal and made a nice little bit of dough on that, got to go to the sports book here. Thanks for George for reminding me. But you know what, guys? I'll be honest. I didn't see him just icing him out cold. You know, those shots over the shoulder of the southpaw, that lead shoulder just really just ice guys. You know, Sam Stout versus Yves Edwards, or Michael Bisping versus Luke Rockhold, and it came over Till's shoulder, and we saw the same effect.
Yeah, Masvidal looked in amazing shape. I was impressed with the fact that, I mean, first of all, Till looked like at the outset that he had his game plan together. You know, he had talked about being more aggressive coming out of the gate, and it looked like he was going to do that. He had a good first round. So this wasn't, to me, so much Till being off his game as it was Masvidal looking sharp, looking like he was in great shape, and also being innovative with the footwork, the switch stance, right before he delivered that left. Yeah. So, you know, it just to me it was two fighters who looked to be on their game, but yet Masvidal won the day by just being a little more so. So I can't find any way to diminish what that accomplishment was for Jorge Masvidal.
I love the way he was switching his stances, and there was two things that he did that I think at least put Till in a position where he had other concerns, right? Other than Masvidal's hands. One was he did like a linear kick, except he was jumping towards him a little bit like Bobby Brown style on Karate Kid. He threw that. It was lazy, but he threw it, and then he threw like a lazy jab before he came with the right, his left, his power hand, and caught Till. It wasn't a hook, and it wasn't a straight punch. It was like in between the two, but yet enough power and right on the button to put Till out. I believe that one right there put him out. But then there was another one that came and caught him on the way down that grazed him a little bit more by the temple. That didn't help. And, of course, he started dribbling the basketball when he, came over on top and I think got one off, maybe two, before the ref interceded. So, first of all, I do want to say this. I ain't taking nothing away from Masvidal because that was just a great finish. The one thing I do concern myself with is Till's dehydration and rehydration because, guys, I've seen a lot of Masvidal fights, and that type of KO it takes a while to get there, or it's a little bit more of the hook variety. But either way, when I saw it live, I was thinking, how did that happen? But then there was like the third or fourth angle that Dan Hardy was showing Masvidal, and it comes from, I guess it would be, if Masvidal is in the southpaw stance, it comes from about his 4 o'clock. And on that angle, you just see the punch connect solid, man. It was right on the button, and it put Till out, and of course, it silenced the crowd. But did you see Twitter sphere just blow up? Why? Because going back to Friday, where I reiterated something that I said for the last few days, weeks, whatever, everyone's a Masvidal fan. The promoter is, well, maybe not the biggest, but still, the promoters, the matchmakers, the executives, other fighters, MMA media for sure, and fans. This guy has had it all at his disposal if he would just fight more frequently and if he would win some of these bigger fights and not those costly split decisions. But I'm telling you, Masvidal just, his stardom shot through the roof on Saturday night.
Fought more frequently, fought twice that night, George. What more do you want from the guy?
He sure did, yeah. So, all right, I'm glad you all got to say what you wanted to say about the Masvidal fight. We can always circle back. Till had won that first round. I think we can all agree there. And in the second round, it was, still too early for us to decide who was really leading. But either way, solid win for George Masvidal. It got him 2 bonuses. But yes, like Goz stated, now he goes back and he's doing the rounds. Not the Dan Hardy, inside the octagon round, which, by the way, that was very classy for Jorge Masvidal. I'm talking about when he goes in the back with Laura Sanko, and I'm sure you've all seen the video by now, and if you haven't, oh man, what kind of a fan are you? Just don't even listen to us, because you're not a hardcore fan. You don't deserve MMA Junkie in your life. As that's happening, apparently someone's chirping. We don't know who. Masvidal gets distracted, says something back. Of course, if all of us have money, right then and there we go. That's Askren. It ain't. It's Leon Edwards. Apparently Leon Edwards, who had just won the co-main event, is probably still decompressing from his fight. And so Masvidal walks over there like a straight-up G. Only he could pull this off. Well, only a couple people could pull it off. Anybody that walks with their hands behind the back isn't really walking like a gangster. Let me start off by saying that. But the end result was he was walking like a G. He just casually walks over, and I think we all thought, oh, words will be exchanged, somebody will jump in the middle, this, that, whatever, and nope, that did not happen. As Ghost stated, Masvidal came away with 2 victories that night. He threw a 3-piece combo and a soda. Those are Masvidal's words, although I thought I counted a 4th punch. And he connected, man. If you've seen the extended video, courtesy of ESPN MMA, you can see that Leon Edwards has a cut below his left eye. And there was some swelling going on, and I'm sure he'll have to wear the shades for a few days. But he got a piece of him there. And I'm telling you, Twitter blew up again. But, I hope I don't catch heat from this. I'm just going to let boys be boys as far as this is concerned. I know you're all expecting me to say, well, it's deplorable, we can't have it. It's true, we can't, especially every weekend. We just can't have that. But I haven't really seen something like that in a long time, and I'm fine with them just, if Leon Edwards ain't going to press charges, which it sounds like he's not, I'm fine with the UFC, who's commissioning themselves on that event, by the way, just leaving it alone, and we all move on. Now, is that what's going to happen? Probably not, because one thing you do when you dole out a punishment is you try and deter future mishaps. But, guys, what did you think of part 2, Masvidal's second fight that night?
Well, we have a cut of it. Josh, you want to play that cut real quick?
This guy, he's one of these hooligans, man. He's like talking crap on social media. I've seen him here. Doesn't really address me as a man, I wanted to talk to him kind of, and he's just like dodging me and like, whatever, we can handle it after the fight. So I'm doing my interview, and this hooligan comes by saying some stuff, and July, get your ass kicked, to July, and I go, maybe, bro, whatever, because maybe I want to kick your ass in April. Maybe I don't want to wait till July. Maybe I don't even want to fight you in a prize ring because you're not worth a training camp. I'll just fight you here because you're a scrub, So I tell him, just say it to my face, like, man, you're saying it, walking away. That's not, like, we're both men, And as I'm walking up to him, I got my hands behind my back to signal I'm not coming here for problems. But he put his hands up like this. It's on video, and he walks towards me. Well, where I'm from, if you do that, you're going to punch me in the face. And that's not going to happen, Leon. You're a dork. You're JV beta. You are what you are, bro. You're just a loser in life, man. You're not going to get a hit off me, So I had to give him the 3-piece with the soda and then just glide out of there, And then some of his friends tried to sucker punch me. Those guys did a big mistake because your visa in America is now revoked, because if you land in America, it's going to be some problems. I mean, there's problems here already, but those people can't go to America no more.
Look, dude, we cannot condone this, obviously, but what I will say is this. I don't feel too bad about it, because the second you start talking smack to a guy like Jorge Masvidal, you have to expect this. You have to expect that he's going to do something like this. I was shocked that Leon, I think he tried to say that Leon kind of put his hands up and that's why he reacted. I don't know that I saw it that way, but Leon should have known better, because this is a real gangster. The same way you don't go up to the Diaz brothers and do those type of things because they're going to do it back. It's the chance that you roll if you're going to talk smack. What'd you guys think?
Leon should have known better.
Yep. That great say, great pull. Yeah, I wasn't surprised by that. You know me, I'm the traditional martial arts guy. Trash talk doesn't do it for me. But am I surprised at this? No, not at all. Just if you've been following Masvidal, and you know what? If anything, it's kind of the anti-trash talking to me. It still kind of proves his point that hey, be careful who you trash talk to. It could be a guy named Jorge Masvidal.
Mm-hmm. I'll take the contrarian point of view here, just in the sense that we have to have a universal understanding that no matter what you say to somebody, if you're talking to somebody, that not only doesn't rise to the level of assault, but it doesn't warrant or justify it. So I can't go through life about to say something disparaging to somebody, and before I do it, have to say to my friend, wait, is this a real gangster? Before I say anything, is he one of the real gangsters? Because I'm not allowed to say anything. I mean, this falls into the category of, Khabib, where I'm from, you can't criticize my religion. It's not about where you're from. It's about where you are right now. And where you are right now is we have a universal rule of law. Now, that being said, I think we all just have to decide collectively if we're going to care about this stuff or not. if we're going to prosecute it or not. When I say prosecute, I mean maybe not even in a court of law, but just is the UFC going to come down with a sanction or not? Of course, it's abroad, so you don't have the state athletic commissions. Just decide whether you care or not. But let's don't be arbitrary about it. Let's don't sanction one and then not sanction another, which seems like the argument that we always have to have. And a lot of times consistency, and a lot of times what seems to matter is how much can this guy bank on the next pay-per-view.
Yeah, I definitely can't argue with that, but just I'll add in one thing at a time. What we said about last week, where we said what Masvidal was talking about, which can look at which could be looked at in a stark contrast. Now looking at his actions is what when he was talking about trash talk and the state of it in MMA. And what did we say? We said he's being genuine. That's why Masvidal has so many fans. And we also say that when guys do the trash talking who aren't genuine, we all say we can spot it out real fast. And I like Leon Edwards as a fighter, but I think Leon Edwards, by all accounts, and maybe Simon Head can weigh on this, is like the nicest dude in the world behind the scenes. He comes off like a respectful martial artist. But we saw it after his win over Peter Soboto. He had that kind of awkward call out of Darren Till and the mic drop, and it was kind of awkwardly timed. You could tell that really wasn't his forte. And I wonder if someone was in his ear. It kind of reminded me of, remember that out-of-character Bader move on DC? Now, it didn't resort to fisticuffs down in Louisiana. Remember that post-fight presser? Mm-hmm. It reminded me of that. It was something tells me someone was in Leon's ear. He goes out of character, and I agree at a certain point. Yeah, I'm not promoting violence, and if Leon's hands weren't in fact up, then yeah, you can't just hit someone for talking trash. But I also kind of to that point of don't do this whole trash talking and inciting violence thing to it could be a bad point, but also B, look what it could lead to. So I guess I don't know. That's just my 2 cents.
Well, I do want to say something though. What Richard said though, you're right. See, Richard, but there are there are rules, there are laws, but a lot of people, not everyone abides by them. So that being the case, you better watch your mouth if you open it not in the right setting. You can't just think, well, I'm in a country that's civilized and there's some fine police officers over there that will step in or not step in or whatever. You just don't know how everybody's thinking. So I'm not sure if I understood your message, but I will say that Edwards did not press charges because I think he realizes I got.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, all right. Well, all right. So let's go to commercial, and we're going to talk to Simon Head when we come back. He was covering the show out in London, so we want to get his thoughts on this show that took place, the main event, and, of course, the antics that took place backstage. You're listening to MMA Junkie Radio on Fight Nation Channel 93. Stay close. We'll be right back.
Your life will be a lot better. Here are Gorgeous and Goes.
Tonight at 10:30 Eastern, the Indiana Pacers duel with the Portland Trailblazers on NBA Radio, Sirius 207, XM86, and streaming on Sirius XM, connected devices, and speakers. I want to dedicate today's show to Ken W. Nielsen, who passed away on March 10th, 2019. He is the father of what you all have heard me talk about over the years, the Nielsen brothers. My friend of mine, Johnny Nielsen, who I went to school with, and his brothers, who are all close in age, all cool dudes that have included me on many bachelor trips and March Madness trips. In fact, they're the ones that got the whole March Madness thing going for me, excuse me. So this is to all of them. I went to the service today, so it was really, really rough to see that, because Mr. Nielsen, their dad, was actually part of these March Madness trips. So it was always really cool right around this time of the year to see him along with the brothers. And the dude was so sharp. He was counted cards when we played blackjack, and always gave great advice. Very witty. He was an practicing attorney for many years, retired a few years, and was enjoying his life. But at 82 years, he checked out a few days ago. But man, he will be missed terribly. All right, folks, we're going to continue on here with our show. Simon Head, who works for MMAjunkie for us when the shows go to the UK, to Europe. He is joining us now on the hotline, and he's staying up. It's got to be almost 1:30 out there in London, England, so we appreciate that. Welcome, Simon Head, to MMAjunkie Radio. How you doing, sir?
I'm very good. It's great to be on. It's 20 past 12 over here, so not quite too late. So
you guys haven't adjusted the clock yet, right?
No, honestly, the whole time zone thing completely throws me for a loop. Whenever you fly over to America, you don't know what time it is half the time. We have daylight savings at different times of the year to you. We need to sit down and work all this stuff out.
That's because when you're in America, you're usually either at the Rhino or at the Mandalay Bay playing blackjack, and they don't have clocks in either of those fine establishments. That's why you're always off, Simon. Sorry, let the cat out of the bag, but folks, this guy goes hard. Anyway,
Literally.
Hey, great job, you and Morgan. Great job, you and Morgan, out there in London, England. It was, tip-top service from you guys. And at the end of the night, we were treated with some really, really great fights and an awesome main event. And I'm telling you, when the main event delivers, it just lifts the whole card. Regardless of what happens, it lifts it. It gives us all that warm and fuzzy feeling that we're looking for on Saturday nights.
Yeah, it was good. I can't go on without mentioning Abby Saban. He was killing it in the back, doing he was running the camera, doing the video editing. So it was actually a 3-man team out there, and Per Halstam at cage side shooting as well. So we had all sorts going on down there in London. But yeah, when you get a good main event, everybody goes home happy. Even if the rest of the card's no good, the main event does the business. Everybody's happy, and we even had a little bit of extra after the main event. So Jorge Masvidal decided he'd beat up 2 Brits on fight night in London.
Yeah, for sure. And so I wanted to ask you, first of all, wow, we're going to talk about Masvidal for sure. He's going to be a focus for all week, if I'm not mistaken. Just I know how this thing works out. But let's talk about Darren Till. This is his second loss in a row, and pretty devastating. One's a shot at the title, and usually this is when these fighters like to pick themselves up and then create, another championship run. He got iced pretty bad, Simon. Is this not only a second loss in a row, a horrible KO, but also the ushering of Darren Till, the middleweight?
Yeah, it's the big question in my mind as well. I think when they announced the Jorge Masvidal fight at welterweight, I scratched my head a little bit, because I was pretty sure after the Tyron Woodley defeat that his next move was going to be to move up to middleweight. We'd seen and heard all the stories about how tough it was for Darren to make 170 pounds, especially championship weight. You don't even get that extra 1 pound leeway. And I was quite surprised when they announced he was going to be at 170. But then we saw him on fight week, and he looked absolutely superb. He looked visibly leaner. He didn't look quite as broad across the shoulders. And even seeing him during the workouts in fight week, he was absolutely ripped. He looked in the best condition of his career physically. But in that fight against George Masvidal, he got a little bit too comfortable in the pocket against Masvidal, let him touch him a little too many times. And most of those Masvidal shots early on weren't the they weren't the real McCoy. He was range finding and just making sure he got his range and his timing sorted. And once he got into that second round and he started touching him regularly, then he loaded up with a big left hook, and it's all she wrote. I mean, Darren Till is still a super talented fighter. He's still incredibly young in the sport. These are the only 2 losses in his career. Obviously, when fighters get back-to-back losses, people start to ask questions, is this the end of the road, or do we need to make a big change here or there? But this is still an elite-level fighter who is still incredibly young, and his only 2 defeats have been to Tyron Woodley and an inspired Jorge Masvidal, who had a quite incredible fight week from start to finish. He really seemed to find his mojo over here in London. So I don't necessarily think he's finished at welterweight. He may still feel there's unfinished business, but I don't think a move up to middleweight is out of the question. For a guy that size, maybe he can be at more of his natural weight, and he can focus purely on delivering the best performance he can, rather than also having to factor in what might still be a relatively tricky weight cut.
We're joined by Simon Head. He's calling over from the UK. He was covering the event for MMA Junkie this past weekend. Follow him on Twitter at Simon Head, and I'm going to send it over to the guys in Vegas. Go, start things off. What do you have for Simon?
Simon, in your opinion, a performance like the one Jorge Masvidal had, can he circumvent a guy like Colby Covington? Because that's kind of what people are throwing out there.
That's a really good question, because not only are they kind of rivals in the welterweight division, they're also really good friends and training partners down there at ATT. So that's a really interesting dynamic between those 2. I think the biggest thing in Jorge Masvidal's favour is he's been competing, he's active, and he's not the type to turn a fight down. Whereas we've seen Colby's, depending on who you listen to, he's turned down opportunities, or he's had injuries that have meant he couldn't take those opportunities. They've both got an edge to them, which makes them sellable, regardless of who they're fighting. But I think because Masvidal he went into the weekend much lower down the rankings. He was in like the double figures. So I think the win this weekend is going to catapult him straight up into that upper bracket. But I would assume that Colby is still the guy. And depending on your view on Colby, there's an argument for saying make the Colby fight, because if Colby's narrative is one that's going to basically fall off the edge of a cliff if he loses, then some people might want to see that happen. Or if he goes and gets the title, then you've got yourself a champion who can really polarise the fan base, and then it's a case of line up the contenders and see who can beat him. But right now, I think Colby's still in the box seat for that title shot.
Hey, Simon, I got some more matchmaking talk to toss to you, but just real quick, I just also want to compliment you. Fantastic job on your coverage as per usual last week in London, and was also catching you on John Morgan's MMA Roadshow there, and I always love hearing your takes on fights and the way you break things down, sir. You ever thought about doing any kind of podcasting on the regular yourself? Any resurrection of Brit Packs, anything like that in the works for you?
Yeah, it's something me and Sandu have sort of spoken about on and off. I mean, it's something that we had to put on the shelf for a while. My work situation at the time was a little bit flaky. I'm freelancing these days, doing bits and pieces for various outlets around and about, and we're in the process of trying to move house. We've got all sorts of dramas at this end, so I had to sort of dial things back a little bit, take care of the priority stuff, and see where we go. I love the podcasting. I'm dead chuffed to be here on MMA Junkie Radio. And John's he's been very kind, and he's had me on the roadshow a few times over the years, and we seem to always come up with some good stuff when we're on. But the problem with the podcasting, Dan, it does take a lot of your time. I mean, if I was a one take guy, this would be easy, but I'm really not. So,
Hey, I hear you. I hear you there, man. Sorry, go ahead.
It's all about the editing. It's all about the editing. If people knew what I actually sounded like, no one would want to listen. So, you need at least 3 hours of solid editing to make me sound even vaguely coherent.
Hey, man, tricks of the trade. Well, I had to pay that compliment toward you. But back to the matchmaking at hand, I was actually thinking about Darren Till, and I was with you, Simon. I thought middleweight was going to be the next move, but as this matchup got closer, especially as I kind of had the hunch that Masvidal could get the jump in this matchup, I thought what would happen with Darren Till, and I'm definitely not against the middleweight move, guys, but how about this? What about rehashing that Mike Perry that Mike Perry little trash talking moment. I believe you might have been there in Poland, Gdansk, I believe, after Darren's win over Cowboy, and is now the time to rehash that?
It's not a terrible idea, is it? I mean, those two guys, there is a genuine respect between the pair of them, but Mike Perry, when he's in fight mode, all bets are off. He turns into a complete lunatic, and he will sell a fight like almost no other. So Till and Perry is an easy win, but I don't know if it makes sense. If I'm Darren Till's manager, I don't know if I want him to drop that far down. With all due respect to Mike Perry, I don't know if I'd want him to be dropping that far down the rankings, because a win over Mike Perry, other than being a really exciting fight, I don't know what it does career-wise for Darren Till. I mean, I've got three names who I think would be relevant and would make sense. One of them is Leon Edwards. If Leon Edwards doesn't get the Masvidal fight next, then Darren Till, for me, makes the most sense. That's a fight that they've both been sort of chirping at each other in the past. Edwards wanted that fight heading into UFC London, so that's one option. Santiago Ponzinibbio is floating around. He would be a very interesting style matchup for Darren Till. Both predominantly strikers, both very aggressive, both big for the weight class as well. So I think that would be interesting. And the other one that you could chuck in there is Robbie Lawler. I think Robbie Lawler versus Darren Till will get a lot of people very excited, and that's the sort of fight you can put on an international fight week card. And I think people would absolutely love that as maybe third from top of the card, or even as a featured ESPN opener. Put it at the top of the prelims as an absolute banger of a fight to say, come buy the pay-per-view. I think that would be an absolute barn burner of a fight.
Very interesting.
Simon Head's trying out for a matchmaker position out in the UK for the UFC, I think, man. Those are some good ones there.
Yeah, I like it. Well, we got one half of the dynamic duel that is Frank Mir and Richard Hunter, host of Phone Booth Fighting. Richard, you got a question for Simon?
Yeah, Simon, you mentioned Leon Edwards, and that's who I wanted to ask you about. He came into this card kind of in the shadow of Darren Till, despite the fact that he's a Brit fighting in London. Gunnar Nelson's a very popular fighter there, and, he was kind of a little bit of a mixed reaction, not necessarily the entire weight of the audience being on the side of Edwards. But not only did he have a very impressive decision win over Nelson in the co-main event, but then, of course, the post-fight theatrics as well with Masvidal. All that being said, I just wanted to ask your thoughts from a person being on the ground there. Did it feel like Edwards' status in the minds of the casual British MMA fan may have gone up significantly as a result of the weekend's proceedings?
Yeah, I don't think there's any way that it can't have, because Gunnar Nelson's one of those fighters who everybody loves. The guy. He's got a great character. I know he's got that deadpan demeanor, but the stuff he does away from the cage, you only have to look at those music videos he does in his gym up in Iceland. It's absolutely crazy. He is a genuine character of the sport. He's got a very traditional martial arts background, which I think appeals to a lot of people. And of course, he comes from that Conor McGregor SBG sort of lineage as well. So there's a whole lot of reasons why everybody seems to love Gunnar Nelson. And there's no denying he was getting the majority of the support from the fans in London. And for Leon Edwards, a Brit to be getting booed on the way to the Octagon in London was, I thought it was really, really sad. And I was so disappointed for him, because, and I know you guys touched on it earlier before I came on, Leon Edwards is one of the most respectful guys you'll meet in the sport. And it's kind of ironic with the whole Masvidal situation after the fight that Leon Edwards has gone his whole career flying under the radar because he isn't a trash talker. He doesn't go out of his way to make some noise, and he's kind of tried to do that a little bit without going over the top, just to try and get people to notice him. And it's kind of ironic. The first time he really sticks his neck out there and does something, he gets smacked in the face 3 times by Jorge Masvidal. So, I feel a bit sorry for him on that front. However, that might actually prove to be one of the things that gets him over and gets him into the consciousness when it comes to the welterweight division. He's won 7 in a row, and you look at some of the names he's put away: Albert Tumanov, Vicente Luque, Brian Barberena. These are all solid guys. Peter Sabota is a respected grappler. Then you've got Cowboy Cerrone, and then the big one this past weekend, Gunnar Nelson. Leon Edwards is a guy who it's a tricky. He's a tricky guy to matchmake for because he hasn't got that star power. He hasn't got that larger-than-life personality. But he's moving his way up the rankings. He's on a 7-fight win streak. The guys above him have got, there isn't really an upside for them to fight him. And it's really tricky. How do you deal with the guy? For me, there's 2 fights for him. One is Till, the other one's Masvidal, and I think one of those has to be made. But I think this is, and that next fight will hopefully, for him, be the one that pushes him into a position where he gets a little bit more respect. I think on the microphone he said, put some respect on my name. And I agree with him because I think he deserves it for the performances he's turned out in the octagon. He's probably the most improved British UFC fighter on the roster. He came in as a striker, and I think you saw at the weekend, quite happy to grapple with Gunnar on the mat. I think he's a truly well-rounded mixed martial artist, and he deserves way more credit than he's getting right now.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of Eliseu Zaleski dos Santos, same position. I think he's 6-1, 7-1. Not many people know who he is until about a week ago. Leon Edwards, same thing, but everyone knows who the heck they are now. Just goes to show you the depth at welterweight, man. These guys are probably somewhere in the, number 10 region, give or take, depending on what rankings you use, but they're solid fighters, and I expect big years out of both of those guys since they've already secured the first win in 2009. But let's talk about the most popular Brit fighter ever, Michael Bisping, who got inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame. The announcement was made this past weekend. I should say it will happen this July when he'll be inducted into the Hall of Fame. What does that mean for the UK and all of the little kids out there that are now gravitating a little bit more towards mixed martial arts, seeing an induction like that? He's also held a belt. Seeing Dan Hardy do a wonderful job commentating, seeing the Leon Edwards and Darren Tills of the world that are progressing through and becoming, I don't know if household names would be fair because I know how big the Premier League is, but at least they're becoming more popular names.
Yeah, I think you look at all these guys who have since gone into the octagon and performed under the flag of the United Kingdom. They've all got Michael Bisping to thank, as well as Dan Hardy, Brad Pickett, Ian Freeman. These guys, they really set the table for the guys who followed. And Bisping, it's kind of funny. I remember I interviewed Bisping a few years ago, and he reeled off a list of some of the jobs that he had. And he once got rejected as a door-to-door salesman because he came across rather too aggressive at the door. And it turns out he's turned out to be one of the greatest salesmen in UFC history because he turned the United Kingdom into a hotbed of mixed martial arts in terms of the UFC by helping win over the media, helping to really spread the gospel of the sport. He was the guy doing the interviews with the newspapers and the magazines when the people interviewing him literally had zero clue what they were looking at. He was the guy having to be patient and explain in the most basic of terms how mixed martial arts worked and that it wasn't this no-rules free-for-all, that there was genuine athleticism, skill, technique, dedication and commitment. Without someone like him, who was able to do that not only with some sort of eloquence, but also with very good humour, I don't think the sport would be where it is today. He's done an incredible job. Then, of course, when he gets in the cage, first British guy to win the Ultimate Fighter. He then went on to coach the Ultimate Fighter. And then he had that incredible Cinderella story of a career. How many times can a guy get knocked down and get back up and try again? He's the sort of the epitome of persistence. And he finally got his chance to win the title at UFC 199. I was the only British journalist in the arena when he did it, and it was a quite incredible experience to be there as a British journalist who's seen him come so close and then fall short each time. And some of the losses that he had are some of the most devastating knockouts that you've seen in UFC history. He got absolutely marmalised by Vitor Belfort. There's the Dan Henderson knockout, which to this day is probably still the single most brutal knockout in UFC history. And you look at what happened to Darren Till this weekend. That was a nasty KO at the hands of Masvidal. If Darren Till needs to look for some source of inspiration, he only needs to look at Michael Bisping. He's been knocked down so many times. He got up, came back again, kept believing in himself, and became the first British UFC world champion. So he's been everything for the UK, and I think it's just rewards for an incredible career for a guy who he's done it all: fighter, coach, Ultimate Fighter winner, and now he's a pundit and even a commentator now, and doing a great job doing that on ESPN. So yeah, he ticks all the boxes. The Count. He's good fun to be around as well.
Simon Head is our guest here on the MMA Junkie Radio Show. You can follow him on Twitter at Simon Head, contributing frequently for MMA Junkie and other outlets. So give him a follow. He's solid. Simon, one more question occurred to me, though, so sorry to keep you up. I know it's past midnight. We really appreciate you doing this for us. But my question is simple. When can MMA have a show like the one that took place at Wembley Stadium with Klitschko and Joshua? 80, 90,000 at Wembley Stadium. How long are we away from something like that, from mixed martial arts? Because that was epic.
Wow. Okay. Well, it's kind of the obvious answer, but you put Conor McGregor in an event at Wembley Stadium, that event will sell out, no problem at all. I know he's not a Brit, but he is the biggest star in mixed martial arts, and you could put Conor McGregor against the cleaning lady, and he'll sell out Wembley Stadium, no trouble whatsoever. He's the big star. I don't think we're at the stage yet where we have a British guy on the horizon who could fill 80,000. If Darren Till can get back on the horse and start reeling off victories and work his way up, whether that be at welterweight or whether that be at middleweight, what I would love to see for him, and it's highly unlikely because of the beautiful British weather that we have over here, I'd love to see Darren Till fight at Anfield. That would for me would be just the most atmospheric UFC event ever held, because you guys are soccer fans over there at MMA Junkie Radio. I know it, and hearing "You'll Never Walk Alone" being sung from the stands at Anfield while Darren Till is in the octagon, that would be a goosebumps on goosebumps moment. But I mean, the north of England, we were really lucky in Liverpool. It was bathed in sunshine when we were there last summer, but that was the only week of sunshine they had that year. So, we're not going to get outdoor stadiums in the UK. Don't really make a lot of sense. If you want to do a big stadium show in the UK, then the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff is the place to go. That place holds about 75, 78,000. They've got a retractable roof. That'll be the place to do it. If you were going to do a massive stadium show, you could do something on the same sort of scale as the Ronda Rousey Holly Holm fight over in Australia. It would have that sort of scale to it. But you'd have to stack that card. We don't have a Brit capable of headlining quite that scale yet. Give us a few years, maybe we'll get there.
All right. Excellent spot, mate. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Let's do this more often.
Great stuff. Thanks a lot for having us on. I appreciate it. Have a good rest of the show.
Okay. Thank you, sir. All right, folks. We're going to take a break. You're listening to MMA Junkie Radio on SiriusXM Fight Nation Channel 93. When we come back, we'll do the daily debate. And, guys, I'm sure you saw it, and I know people want to talk about it. UFC and ESPN have struck another deal. We'll talk about all that when we come back.
On anything. Everybody knows it's duck season.
Rabbit season.
Duck season.
Rabbit season.
Whether it's food.
Less filling.
Tastes great.
Less filling.
Tastes great.
Gambling.
Always bet on black.
I like red.
Black.
Red.
Black.
Red.
Black, dummy.
Or even social media.
Instagram.
Snapchat.
Instagram.
Snapchat.
The same applies to the biggest stories in MMA. Time for MMA Junkie Radio's Daily Debate.
Today's hashtag daily debate for at MMA Junkie Radio. Jorge Masvidal knocked out Darren Till cold in the hashtag UFC London main event. Then he scuffled with fellow welterweight Leon Edwards backstage. Which should get more attention for propelling Masvidal forward? 3 choices, fellas. Focus on in-cage wins, controversy pays bills, or gotta have a little of each. Start things off, Goes.
I think it's got to be a little bit of each. If it weren't like that, I think GSP and Matt Hughes would have been the all-time pay-per-view record, right? But you just kind of need a little bit of heat now and then to kind of satisfy both ends of the spectrum. What do you think, Richard Hunter?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I think if you're asking it practically in terms of how is it going to go down, I think that's exactly what's going to happen. I think that the more hardcore fight fans are going to focus on what transpired in the octagon itself, and more casual observers are going to hear that there was some sort of controversy. Case in point, I watched the fights on delay, and before I even got to the fight itself, my girlfriend was aware of the fact via social media that 2 fighters had had an altercation in the back. So the news got to her that there was some sort of controversy after the card concluded before the results of the card itself.
What do you think, Dan Tom?
Man, I initially was on your guys' side, and I really can't disagree with either your points. But if I look at the question, it said, which should get more attention for propelling Masvidal forward? And if I'm going to answer that question and take it at its literal meaning, I guess I got to go as far as focus on the in-cage win, at the end of the day. I mean, if Masvidal lost, your guys' points would have still held true. Richard's girlfriend would have still heard about the scuffle before the fight results. All that stuff is still true, but without the actual win, and don't get me wrong, we've seen guys get title shots in the UFC off of losses, so I understand that there's holes to poke no matter which route you go, but if I'm answering honestly, guys, I'll go focus on the in-cage wins here.
What is this, a sport?
I know. Crazy, right?
All right, guys. Let me ask you something, though. There was like 12 fights that night. There was 12 different winners. What was more special about Masvidal? I guess he did get the KO, was in the main event, but that happens every week. Guys, what sells fights, you guys know where I'm headed. Controversy, man. Controversy pays the bills. Because Jorge doesn't want just the title fight. He wants to get the title and then make a lot of bank. That's why he wanted 2 bonuses. You know what I mean? He wants to make a lot of money and secure his family's future. When he becomes champion, if he becomes a champion, he doesn't want to sell 200,000 pay-per-views. He wants to sell 800,000. That's what pays the bills. Therefore, I believe most of the attention for propelling Masvidal will be because of that, and I don't think it's a bad thing.
I didn't. That's not fair. I didn't know George's opinion was going to get a disco bet under.
I know, right?
Yeah, what was that? What was that about?
I want to think of Colby Covington, right? I mean, he kind of had both, and he didn't get what he wanted.
But he's gone to the silly. Like,
think so?
I think that's
a little bit.
Masvidal's slinging out combos though,
bad
with
timing.
a soda.
Yeah, but Colby Covington's making his own he's like making his own T-shirts at the kiosk at the mall. I don't know. He's picking up.
Check it out though. Masvidal probably won't get the title shot because it seems to be Covington's. All right.
Okay.
However, would you guys not say that maybe he jumped ahead of Askren?
Yeah, I could say that.
Yeah.
So progress was made, and did he jump ahead of Askren just because of the Till KO, or also the antics backstage? I think that's something that could be debated. That could be a separate daily debate, but it didn't hurt him. That's for sure.
Nah, I can see that argument, but then I just think I've yet to hear Dana White really come out and say his new thoughts on Ben Askren. Because I think that's a big that'll play a big part in whether or not
he can never
this guy
endorse
gets a
it, but
shot.
I guarantee you he can never endorse it, but I guarantee you he's in the back like Lex Luthor. Excellent. Although that wasn't really a Lex Luthor.
No.
It was a Mr.
Line,
Burns.
but all right, I think so. As it turns out, as always, I'm always last on picks, and I think I usually pick the lowest choice here when it comes to the daily debate. This is how it broke down. Got to have a little of each. Took 47% of the votes. Focus on in-cage wins, 42% of the votes, and controversy pays the bills. 11% of the 11% was that tally. So thank you to those that voted. We really, really appreciate it. And what are you going to do? I know I'm a little bit of a savage when it comes to some of this stuff. Excuse me, guys. All right. So I don't think we can give it proper due justice now. So when we come back at the top of the break, we'll talk about the UFC ESPN deal. You guys are going to really, really want to hear about that. Right now, seeking a couple quick calls. If we got them. Who do we have, guys?
Yeah.
We got Kevin in Chicago.
Chicago coming strong.
Bust it out. What's up, Kevin?
What's up? So I wonder if John Morgan, does he still think Darren Till can beat Kamaru Usman? Remember a while back I was asking him that, I was like, why is Kamaru Usman should be getting the title shot? Darren Till sucks, he's overrated. And John Morgan's like, I don't know about that, I think Darren Till could beat Usman. How long have I been on this bashing Darren Till train? It seems like for about 6 months, maybe longer. And everybody thinks I'm just bashing him, I'm just a hater. No, man, the kid's overrated. Go back and watch that Nicholas Dalby fight, and he was nearly out on his feet in the third, and luckily he got a draw. Man, I saw it from the beginning. The dude's overrated. He's basic in everything he does. He sticks his chin out, likes to come in and throw these combinations. He beat an old cowboy, 155-pounder. Got a gift decision against Wonder Boy. Dude, he's just overrated, man. I called it from the beginning. I knew it. That they're trying to hype a British guy, overrated. And Jorge Masvidal calling for a title shot. You had your chance against Mayan. You got backpacked for 3 rounds. You don't get a title shot off being a hype job. And you're supposed to be best friends with Colby Covington or good friends with Colby Covington, and you're calling for a title shot when you know he deserves it. When he beat Maia, you lost to Maia. No, man. I think Leon Edwards should get a title shot before him. I think that Brazilian dude's on an 8-fight win streak should get a title shot before Masvidal. What's your guys' thoughts on that?
All right, thanks for the call.
What's your thought on all of that, George?
What's your thought on my 14 points? All right, Till is 17-2-1. That's not overrated to me. He's just not title worthy at this moment, but maybe he's young. Maybe he can come back. Masvidal, anybody that wins is usually calling for a title shot. You can't slight somebody for doing that. I believe Kobe will be next. We are going to take this quick break. We'll be back in about 60 seconds. Call in if you want to follow Kevin. We still have some time before we get to our guest in the second hour, Frank Mir. So call in at 877-FIGHT93 or 877-344-4893. Also, when we come back, ESPN UFC talk. You guys are going to really like hearing about this news.
I get paid to say things in this cool voice, and they get paid to be lame. Here are Gorgeous George and Goes.
All right, guys. This is big news, so we needed some time to unpack it. Kind of needed to be its own segment. You couldn't just, flip it in there in the midst of Masvidal talk or any of that shit. So here we go. I'll read the headline, and then tell you guys a little bit about what I read on the way in here, because this was, once again, late breaking news, which I get asked a lot. What do you think of the new time slot? And I'm like, well, we seem to get some really, really big breaking news as we're walking in.
Yeah.
The UFC makes ESPN Plus exclusive provider of pay-per-view events in the U.S., and they extend their ESPN deal. Now, remember, the UFC and ESPN entered into a deal which was $300 million a year for 5 years, so it was a $1.5 billion deal. And the UFC was going to do something along the lines of what they did with ESPN. Hey, we got the pay-per-views. We'll do some big ESPN shows, which was equal to the big Fox shows. And then we'll do most of our other stuff on ESPN Plus, which wasn't really a television channel, as was Fox Sports 1 and 2. But what it was their digital platform, where people could sign up and, for $4.99 and basically get a lot of prelims and exclusive shows there, along with a lot of original content. So far, I would say that 2 months in, that's been a hit. I really enjoy going to ESPN, whether it's the website or ESPN Plus. I believe that they've done very well. So right away, those two entities obviously feel that things are going well because they've already extended the broadcast deal an extra 2 years. That means they'll go 7 years. I don't believe we have actual numbers to add to what I mentioned earlier. However, included is a new agreement that makes, this is the key part, included in this extended broadcast deal is a new agreement that makes ESPN Plus the exclusive provider of UFC pay-per-views in the United States. Now, that means if you go to Hooters or a bar, that's commercial. They can watch it in the different ways that they order it. But if you're watching it at home, gone are the days of DirecTV or, well, shit, all I've ever had is DirecTV, so whatever else is out there, I guess Dish or any of the cable subscribers and other means of getting the pay-per-view, you got to get it through ESPN Plus. And it kicks off with the next event in April 13th, which is UFC 236 in Atlanta. So this thing's kicking off. Again, residential fans in the United States now will have a single purchase point for UFC pay-per-view events, the ESPN Plus streaming platform. I don't know if this had anything to do with them butting heads with DirecTV a while back, and they were able to sort it out for one show, or how this happened, or it's just too much money to pass up. And I don't know if this will be good or bad, but to me it just seems incredible that, again, these two massive entities, the UFC and ESPN, are strengthening what they have. Guys, react to that.
I think I'm gonna be the old man in this one. I hate change. Look, man, remembers. I'm one of those guys that I'm not a big fan of streaming live stuff. And it's mostly because I enjoy going on social media during fights. And not everyone is on the same wavelength. So you're watching a fight, and then all of a sudden you see that tweet that says, "Oh my God, that was a crazy KO," and you go, "What? I haven't gotten it to yet," and it kind of ruins your experience. It's not as fun. Even in the same house, there's times where we could be watching a Manchester United game on the NBC app, and for some reason we just didn't sync up right. And George is ahead of me, and I hear George screaming out from downstairs, and I go, "Fuck!" I just hear the scream. I know what's going on. I never really have too much luck with that. I have
Sometimes
a father.
That's me pleasuring myself, by the way.
I have a father.
Oh. The game's not even on.
Who can barely work the internet. And now how am I going to explain to him how to log on and how to do that and how to remember?
I just don't think that happens that often, though. I don't think that happens that often. I think it's easy for just to hit the live button and sync up to the most current. I mean, I think before it was a little bit more primitive, but
the internet,
I don't think it's the same.
Man, it gets on my nerves. I'm going to do it, and it's not as bad as other changes, but that is something that's just kind of always driven me crazy about that. What do you guys think?
I agree. I'm usually kind of an old curmudgeon on things beyond my years, if you will. And I think that's going to be an issue, too. Not for me, per se. In fact, with the ESPN Plus, I don't know about you guys, I finally got myself one of them old smart TVs, right? And actually, when I load up the menu, if there's an event going on, it actually pops right up at the top left corner, it's one click and I get it right on my TV, right? The ESPN Plus event. I'm hoping they make it that accessible and kind of force it onto the viewers' radar that like they're doing if they're going to do the pay-per-view. But to Goz's point, here's what I worry about, guys. I think it's gonna hack away at our hardcore fan base, and it's gonna be similar to the Fox era, where the Fox era, about 2011, guys, we start stepping up in shows. We get into this era where people like me and many others are saying we're a bit oversaturated here, right? The numbers grew, the short term grew, maybe even the long term grew as well, but the short term definitely grew, guys. But a lot of those hardcores, especially you guys know this, listeners of the show even, or personal friends of yours, that would always be, hey, blah, 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 oh, you going to catch the pay-per-view this weekend? You started hearing less and less of those, right? They're like, oh, is St. Pierre still fighting? I don't know who these guys are, because we're asking so much of them, part of it's on FXX, part of it's here, and so many shows a week. We were asking so much of the viewer that we lost a big age group and a big amount of our hardcore viewers. I think we're going to take another chunk out of our hardcores here, because I could see a lot of casual fans seeing the hurdles that Goz is proposing and being like, you know what, this is a little bit too much hoops for me, or even what I call would-be hardcores going, you know what, at this rate, I'm just going to wait for one of my friends to subscribe or to order the pay-per-view, because it's not just ordering the pay-per-view. Do I have to subscribe now? And that's going to turn a lot of people off.
Download the app.
And even people, they'll be optimistic. They'll be like, I'm still going to follow the sport, but I'm just going to, watch my friend's subscription. We all know how that goes. So, again, for me right now, I think it feels like a lot of short-term grab, and I'm a little worried about the long-term. That's the only thing I can say.
All right. I like the technology of the app and streaming in and of itself. I'm a cable cutter for a number of years, and I've enjoyed being one. And even more to the point with the ESPN Plus app, I like the app. It's a good value at $5 a month. It got me to be able to disconnect the elective tier that I had to have on my Sling TV to have all the FS1, FS2 things.
Nice.
Because as someone who only enjoys combat sports, I have no use for Ding Dong State playing Middle Tennessee in the FarmersOnly.com Bowl. And that was something I felt like I was inadvertently having to support.
I'm with you on that.
All right. But here's my big question. I don't understand where this leaves Fight Pass. I'm a big Fight Pass supporter. Now, Fight Pass costs twice the money as the ESPN Plus apps, $10 a month, all right? Which, for guys like us, I'll always have it because of the fight library, But how many people, before they watch a pay-per-view on a weekend, start researching fights on a Monday or a Tuesday? Most people don't. They don't have that's why they listen to shows like this. So you take those the professionals out of the equation. What is the value now in Fight Pass? And I'm so confused because this really doesn't get addressed very much, because you say, okay, what does Fight Pass still have? Up until this press release came out today, I thought that the value was going to be that the early prelims for pay-per-views were still going to air on Fight Pass. Now that's changing, because they will air both on Fight Pass and ESPN Plus.
Yes.
So if you have ESPN Plus, you're telling me that I get my pay-per-view through there. I'm also going to get all the prelims through there. The only reason for me to now have Fight Pass is for the library or for some of the other live streaming events like, the jiu-jitsu tournaments and stuff. Again, which as a professional, quote unquote, I'm totally into, but I don't know how many fans will continue, especially at twice the price point, $10 a month, to continue to pay for that. So I'm very confused as to unless they're just kind of slowly letting it drift off, which seems weird considering everything they had invested in Fight Pass. I don't understand what the pitch is going to be for why you're going to want Fight Pass, because there's going to be something there that you cannot get through the ESPN franchise, and now it seems like that's not the case. My other question is, does this mean we're not even going to go to UFC.com anymore to buy pay-per-views? Okay, so according to the press release, it's $5 a month for ESPN Plus. If you pay up for the whole year, which is $50 for the year, you're also going to get a pay-per-view thrown in, but the pay-per-view price point, that's $60, $59.99. I wonder if they're going to have the standard definition option available on there for $10 less that UFC.com always had. Again, do you see what I'm saying about Fight Pass? I mean, that seems to be the thing no one is talking about.
Let me chime in here. Fight Pass is for the international audience. ESPN Plus is only available for the United States and I believe Canada.
Yeah, but
we're the only ones that can use ESPN Plus.
Right.
The international audience is the ones that use the Fight Pass the most.
But it's not.
So,
but George, it's
here's
not.
Here's another thing.
No, I just did. Let me, if I can, just react to that real quick. I hear you, but the thing about that is, it's not like the UFC is sitting there looking at their Fight Pass numbers, going, "Man, nobody in America subscribes to this thing." You see what I'm saying? Like, I see what you're saying. It would still have international appeal, but are you saying, George, that you think that's just kind of what they're thinking is, hey, we'll just make that moving forward kind of more of an international platform?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Well, here's what I thought. I thought it was until the UFC just had the UFC channel or whatever WWE's is called, something like that, where it was all for them, not in bed with somebody else. That's why this one kind of caught me by surprise. So here's a couple things first to address what you were saying. It's $10 a month. I'm not going to do $9.99 and $4.99. I'm just going to go around numbers. It is $10 a month for the UFC Fight Pass. One announcement I heard, though, and I actually promised the listener I would look into this, and I totally forgot about it, was I heard that if you had UFC Fight Pass, but also subscribe to ESPN Plus, they would cut UFC Fight Pass in half. Thereby, you'd be back to the original $10 you were spending, except now you had Fight Pass, and now you had ESPN Plus.
If that offer
exists, if you only have
exists,
ESPN Plus, if you're an American, then you can't watch Invicta, you can't watch CFFC, you can't watch whatever other original programming they have. Which, by the way, one might say, "Hey, I'm just UFC ride or die," so it may not matter for some. But because to ESPN's credit, they've come up with some of their own original programming, and I think they've done a good job. But let's say you want it all. Then there is a way where I believe you pay $5 to Fight Pass, or $5 to ESPN Plus, and now you're back at your original 10. Now the deal that they've come up with is it's $5 a month for ESPN Plus, or you can pay it for the whole year, $50, and you're all set. One thing they threw out there was if you pay $80 for the whole year for ESPN Plus, they'll give you one pay-per-view. What does that mean? It's basically for an extra $30, you get one pay-per-view. Thereby, you save $20 off, or $30 off one of your pay-per-views, because the pay-per-views now go to $59.99, again, $60 rather than $65. Hopefully that made sense. Is it much? No, I was hoping for a little bit more of a price break, something that starts whittling us down to WWE numbers, but it doesn't appear like we're anywhere close. And why should it be, I guess, if you're the UFC? Because people still keep paying it.
Yeah, no, and if that deal exists, though, because I'm somebody who subscribes to both and has since the inception of the ESPN Plus app, and I'll tell you this, I get every other email from the UFC, and if that deal exists, they haven't notified me. So it needs to be easier to discover if there is an actual break that you get for having both.
Yeah, and selfishly I'll add, and I was thinking about these things you brought up too. Obviously with my job I have to go back and watch these things front to back, and not even just having to pay on two platforms and getting people, whether it's your American or international audience, to convince them for different reasons. You're having to even pay and visit two platforms if you want to achieve the same thing, such as just going through someone's fight library. We haven't had to come across it yet, but I guarantee you within the next one or two fight cards, especially when you get these Donald Cerrone's making their turnarounds, we're going to start running into that, where we have guys who their last fight took place under this ESPN era.
Oh, it's a good point.
How long will that turnover be? Now do we have to not only pay, like to your point, Richard, we'll actually have to physically go and navigate just to be, that's our reward for being one of the diminishing hardcore audience members.
Do the ESPN fights go over to Fight Pass is what you're saying?
That's a big thing I'm waiting to see how they approach, how they're going to do their turnover. It's a real, because those things actually interconnect.
Wait, I don't understand that. What does that mean? Say that again, Dan Tom, if you don't mind, because I really didn't catch that.
For example, for a pay-per-view, especially if it's a controversial pay-per-view like UFC 229, it takes a little minute to get on the old UFC library, but usually they're generally
30 days, right?
Yeah, they're usually generally quite quick, otherwise turning it around. And by the time the fighter fights next, you can usually get all their fights up to date, right? And so now with the ESPN era starting in our year here of 2019, we haven't had a fighter yet make a quick turnaround. I believe the first one last year was Jeremy Stevens when he did the Do Ho Choi, Josh Emmett's quick turnaround at the beginning of the year. We haven't had a fighter like that yet, but we're right on the verge. We're ending the first quarter of the year soon, right? So Yeah, it's going to be happening soon, guys. Be interesting to see how they're going to aggregate all these things.
Will the ESPN era fights turn up on UFC Fight Pass?
Yeah,
after the fact, that's the question. Yeah,
right now,
you think?
Right now, apparently, you can go back and watch these ESPN fights on ESPN Plus, I believe. But I think you have to like kind of navigate through the whole event just to get to the fight you want. And something else people were bringing up, they said, okay, if you're going to bring it to the ESPN players, can we change the player? You know, Fight Pass has some really nice things to their credit on their players. Their rewind 15 second, or there's a lot of these things, or they have a chapter where you just scroll below and you can skip to get to where you want to go. It saves a lot of time, and ESPN Plus has yet to do that. Obviously, they're an early app. I'm not trying to hold them over the fire, but if they're making that our only option, people would like to see those things addressed.
It's just weird because is it just me, or has anybody else noticed that Fight Pass just doesn't get talked about, even in these interviews, even when they're talking to Dana White about the big announcements and stuff? It's never, okay, but what does this mean to Fight Pass moving forward?
I feel like it's just like a quiet thing in their back pocket as far as I would argue, I don't know their numbers obviously, but even with just the Pancrase, EBI, Quintet, and I'm not sure if they still have the deal with Titan Fighting, I would imagine that they kind of have a handle on their streaming service, even though they let go of Eric Winter, which I believe is a big answer to your question on why we haven't seen promotion from in promotion to just it becoming a topic in the media sphere or the lexicon of MMA. But not only that, I think they just have a handle on it, guys, and I would argue that it probably turns a nice profit for them, and even though the bargaining power of that vehicle has diminished with all these deals and streaming platforms sprouting out, I think between their feeder organizations, when you connect these dots to what they're streaming on there, the price is probably really costing them at the end of the day, and where we're pulling a lot of these talents for these Dana White Contender Series and so forth, I think it's all a nice symbiotic circle where they can just keep it in their back pocket, and even though it feels like we're going all in on ESPN, guys, I feel like that Fight Pass is going to stick around. Kind of to George's point, I guess.
All right, let's see what Junkie Nation thinks. Again, the number to call in is 877-FIGHT93, 877-344-4893. Let's start off with Showtime in Tennessee. What's up, Showtime? It's your time.
Hey, what's going on, fellas?
Showtime.
Not much.
Yeah, man, I'm just sitting here thinking, a guy like me, I have Fight Pass, ESPN, Plus, The Zone, I got all that shit, so I hope it's a way that they can, make, I guess if you got Fight Pass and ESPN Plus, it's a way that you get a little discount for having both. And then I'm that same junkie that pretty much I'm going to buy every pay-per-view, whether I'm at home or whether I'm working. I got to buy it on my tablet, my laptop, because I got a couple different ways I can watch it when I'm on the move. So, shit, if I look up now how much money I'm spending at the end of the year, but I don't know about you guys, when I'm wagering on something, I want to watch it. It's like I kind of feel like I'm jinxing myself if I don't watch it, if I'm betting my money on it. So I guess I'm that sucker, that regardless of what they do, I'm going to still consume the product, I don't know how many people that they have that are loyal like that, but, I got to admit I'm one of those. But I want to make a comment about this weekend fight, guys. I watched Dan Tom. I actually listened to his podcast earlier that day because I was up driving all night. And coming towards the end, man, I put a nice little meltdown on Masvidal, man, and he closed it out. I was like, shit.
Nice, nice.
You're calling to get his address for his cut, or what?
I wouldn't mind that. Now we could just grab a nice frosty one next time you hear Showtime. But I'm glad that worked out for you. It sounded like a lot of junkies took a shot on the old Masvidal train, which was nice to hear.
Oh yeah, I took, who else I took? Because to be honest, man, it's a couple of you junkies. I like to kind of listen. I listen to George Goes. I listen to what y'all say about the, when y'all make y'all staff picks and all that, and, John Rico, Gabe. I kind of take into consideration what everybody's saying and then make my plays myself. But you broke that fight down. You spot on. You said it was going to be, we'll go to a decision, but your breakdown was spot on, Dan Tom. But, I was looking, I'm like, okay, Masvidal has a speed advantage, even though, he's the smaller guy. I mean, it wasn't going to be a wrestling grappling match. It was going to really just be a fucking boxing match, really.
Well,
the outcome was good, man.
Oh, well, I appreciate that, man. But one thing I just want to add on to that real quick. I don't know if it was it on this show, guys? I know I said it on the podcast Showtime. But even though, like I said, the official prediction was by decision, I said this feels like awful lot like I was talking about when a guy loses a title fight. He still gets a lot of rub. Even if he gets dominated, he goes to his next fight, they're going to see him made the favorite. And it felt like Dan Hardy, after he lost to GSP, he goes back home in England against a wily vet who's maybe not known for knocking people out in Carlos Condit. And what did we see happen there? And it's kind of spooky how parallels from that is to what we saw this last weekend. But thanks for the shout on the podcast, Showtime.
Thanks for the call, Showtime. We appreciate it, my man. All right, let's talk to Cage Side Nick from Arizona. What's up, Cage Side Nick?
Not much, man. I just chipping out on this one, checking out you guys MMA Junkie on YouTube, and it said that it's being exclusive, man. This is just a big time hit for us guys on the stick. Just trying to watch and just see the pay-per-view is all I do, and it's just a big time hit, though. That's all it is, though. But yeah, that fight though was crazy though, with Darren Till fucking just getting knocked out, man. That sucks, but all good though. Jorge Masvidal though, that's a bomb though. You can't mess with cats like that, especially what happened with Leon Edwards after that. You guys just check yourself basically, and that's what happens. You just get checked if you come saying the wrong stuff.
Yeah, pretty much. I could not tell, and I wanted to ask the guys, was Masvidal right? Did Leon put his hands up? Because it was kind of dark once Masvidal walked off the little mini set there that they had for the ESPN interviews. So I really, really couldn't tell. Have you guys seen any other footage, or are your guys' eyesight better in regards to what he was saying?
I didn't really see his hands go up. I saw them go up because he was getting punched. But if he did put his hands up, I would say Masvidal has the quickest reaction in the history of the world because he threw those punches pretty quickly. Did you guys see his hands go up?
I didn't see it either, and you're right. It wasn't lit the way that the interview area was, so it was a lot of it was in shadow.
Could have been off camera maybe, and then he put him down. I don't know.
The camera also looked like he may have been.
Was that three-piece?
Go ahead, George.
Go ahead, Dan.
I was going to say, it also looked like the camera may have been doing a zoom as well. Sorry, so it kind of blurred our vision. But, yeah, I'm with Ghost. Right. It looked like the same time. Go ahead, George. Apologies.
Thanks, Nick, for the call. I was wondering, was that three-piece? Most of us think like, KFC or Popeyes or something, and I guess a Coke to go with it. But because it was in the UK, was it fish and chips and a cup of tea?
Yeah, I guess it could be some Nando's.
Chips and a pint.
And a pint, that's right, yeah. Oh, man. I could not believe that he did that. And I don't know what the repercussions will be. I am hoping that they just sweep it under the rug. But I can't lie to you all and say the Masvidal fan in me is not coming out. And I know, again, how do you deter that from happening in the future? There's usually a punishment that goes with it. So I haven't heard anything yet on how they're going to figure it out. But speaking of bonuses, I did want to say this because we've yet to really dive into the card too deep. Fight of the night bonus went to Masvidal and Darren Till. Performance of the night went to Masvidal and Dan Ige. Shout out to Dan Ige from Extreme Couture. That was a huge win for him over Danny Henry. There was 16,602 in attendance at the O2 Arena in London, and the total gate was 2.4 million. If I'm not mistaken, that was the biggest gate that the UFC has had in London, and they've had quite a few shows there, so good on them. I know we're going out to commercial right now, so let me just give you some of the other results of some of these other fights so that you all will know these results. And I know a lot of you didn't catch the event. So Masvidal defeated Darren Till. Leon Edwards in the co-main event defeated Gunnar Nelson. Dominic Reyes over Volkan Ozdemir. Lots of controversy there. Nathaniel Wood defeated Jose Quinones. Claudio Silva defeated Danny Roberts. Jack Marshman defeated John Phillips via split decision there. On the prelims, Arnold Allen defeated Jordan Rinaldi. Killed my parlay, by the way. Mark DiChiesi defeated Joseph Duffy. Saparabek Safarov defeated Nikolai Negumereanu, something like that. Danny Ige defeated Danny Henry. Molly McCann defeated Priscilla Cachoeira. And Mike Gundy defeated Nad Narimani. By the way, the McCann-Cachoeira fight was pretty entertaining. All right, folks, it's pay the bills time. So you're listening to MMA Junkie Radio on Fight Nation Channel 93. Stay close. We'll be right back. Don't forget, Fight Beer coming up.
Champion. Fight coming up anytime soon?
Yes, we're currently in negotiations. We're aiming for July. We'll see what happens. So I am staying ready. This morning I was doing incline sprints on the treadmill on my program, the McGregor Fast program. Stay in a hotel room, so we're staying on it, getting work in as we go.
I get paid to say things in this cool voice, and they get paid to be lame. Here are Gorgeous George and Goes.
Boy, that Conor McGregor gets around. First, he had those problems down in Miami this past weekend. Then he's in Boston giving a pep speech to the Boston Bruins before they go out and play a game of hockey. And that cut you just heard was McGregor as he told ABC7 TV in Chicago that he's in negotiations to come back in July. We all know that July is the month where the UFC has their International Fight Week. They push for it to be the biggest card of the year. It doesn't always guarantee it. For example, last year, UFC 226 was October 6th with Khabib and Conor McGregor. But still, outside of pay-per-view sales, they always try and stack it. They fly a lot of their fighters in town, and that's when they have the Hall of Fame and whatever version's left of the UFC Fan Expo. But that's good news because we know Khabib wasn't going to fight till the fall. We certainly didn't want Conor to also not fight until the fall because that would put both guys at 1 year. These guys need to fight more often than 1 year, in my opinion. And so I really, really liked hearing that. Now, he didn't really talk about who might be next. He just says he's in negotiations. But how about the fact that he was able to get that quick plug-in on McGregor Fast program? He's a genius. You got to give him that. He's a genius when it comes to the plugs.
Yeah, for sure. That was pretty cool. You know how hard people work to try and get this guy to talk on camera, just one-on-one, and somehow they were able to get that clip. But I'm very curious to see about all these. We've been talking a little bit more about the things he does outside the cage, how it affects his fighting career. Dude, I honestly think outside of fighting, it's starting to be more lucrative for that guy. I think he's looking to the future.
Yeah, that's a funny thing. I was going to say, I'm not even worried about him as a businessman. I think we know he's smart. I think we could even predict certain things, like Go said, his outside of the cage career would be more lucrative. The ironic part is at this point, how much of a fighter is he still, a martial artist? And I'm not trying to say that in a disparaging way to Conor McGregor, but let's just kind of look at, aside from the obvious facts of the trouble he's been getting in, but even the positive stuff. And I know there's been a lot more promoting, a lot more, let's just say, timely tweeting guys, whether it's the proper 12 runs of retweets or him, dipping his toe in after each UFC event. And he's keeping up on all those fronts, but I just worry, where is he at as far as that fighter mentality? And not only that, he looks to be on the road. I'm not following Conor too closely, guys, and obviously there are certain legal days, but being in Miami, training in his hotels, I haven't been seeing him at the SBG home or even with his buddy Gunnar Nelson, who had a whole camp against a guy who was only an inch taller than McGregor and fought from the inch or two taller than McGregor and fought from the southpaw stance. Boy, would that have been a useful training partner for guys who were reportedly inseparable as far as helping each other train. I'm not trying to pry or incite more gossip, guys, but I just wonder, when you connect all those dots, where does that leave McGregor as the martial artist?
I mean, I think for right now, it must be very tempting for him to continue to pursue all of the outside the cage interests. I mean, I'm sure that Mayweather payday was a pivotal point in terms of that mentality, because it's awfully hard, despite the amount of money that he still gets paid to fight in the UFC when he does fight in the UFC, to all of a sudden go fight for a much lesser payday than you made just a few years ago fighting Mayweather. And some of this other stuff that you can do, I mean, it not only probably seems financially lucrative, but it also probably strokes the ego a little bit too, especially when you'd like to position yourself as a modern day businessman. Huh?
What ego could you possibly be talking about?
Yeah, Conor McGregor's ego. But what I wonder, though, just like I think it's always fair to ask the question, just like I was asking it about Mayweather on the show last week, hopefully all this is being managed properly. Because as much as there is being made, when it's mismanaged, it sure can go away awfully quick. And jet fuel for a private jet is very expensive, especially when you're using it to commute. Yeah. So, I don't – do you guys think that at this point Conor McGregor is established enough for the ages that if he didn't have another maybe more than one or two more meaningful fights in MMA, that over the years he could still be regarded as like an Oscar De La Hoya type or a Mayweather type, for that matter, somebody that could continue to involve himself in businesses that depended on being connected to his combat sports stardom. I don't know.
I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no, but I'm going to say he's getting closer.
Yeah, I think he's close, but I think you're right, Goes. That's why I posed the question, because I think he may, if that's what he's thinking, I think it may be just a little bit premature for that.
Well, I actually have an opinion on that, Richard. One guy that it shocked me, but I respect the way he's been able to pull it off, is Shaq O'Neal when it comes to endorsements.
Mm-hmm.
So Conor McGregor's already accomplished so much in our sport that he's a legendary figure for sure. Look, if you want to talk about the fighting, he's been outstanding there. He's been a world champion. One thing he lacks is, obviously the title defenses. Pay-per-view star, hell yeah. Ratings star, hell yeah. King of Smack Talk, hell yeah. Controversy, hell yeah. Whatever. The guy has covered it all. But I think there's also a reason why a lot of these fighters, like Mayweather, maybe a Ric Flair, maybe a Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson seems to have warmed up a little bit in the last few years, but I don't know that they were huge stars when it came to marketing and advertising. And I mean, when they were on, they were, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Shaq O'Neal's always been kind of like that teddy bear, and he's taken the approach where I'm all in with whatever it is that I'm promoting. I want a piece of the business, and I'm going to give you everything. And so he does his due diligence. So it depends. If Conor McGregor's just going to be brazen and cocky, yeah, he'll be able to get away with some of the stuff while he's active. But when he's retired, I don't know that it'll transfer over. Guys that have kind of kept quiet and just been silent assassins, and they've done more, they're talking through lifting trophies and things like that, like Michael Jordan, Shaq O'Neal, whatever, then they have a little bit more firepower post-career.
Yeah, I think through business and all these things that you guys are mentioning, that I actually could see him being successful in that regard, as far as having his name out there. But there's also that, again, back to the fighter, martial arts, whatever you want to call it, aspect of it, where Shaq, say what you will about Shaq, and believe me, if anyone wants to bring negatives to Shaq, your boy here won't be shy. But no, honestly, Shaq has a lot of great accomplishments that kind of garnered him, plus that character, and you wonder where these parallels are going to be, for example, Jason Mayhem Miller to Ricardo Mayorga. You could see a certain parallel there where the gimmick maybe gets a little bit too much, and you end up toward the later years, and I'm not trying to pick on Jason Mayhem Miller here. I hope he's doing well. But
I don't think he is.
I don't think he is either, but I'm just kind of pointing that out. Where will McGregor end? I don't think he'll be that low in the Mayorga standpoint, but I don't think he'll be the McGregor either. Will he be more like an Adrian Broner, where he ended up getting his titles in his run, but and don't get me wrong, he'll have a much more historical stamp in mixed martial arts than Broner does to boxing. But Broner, now you kind of just hear him. He'll get the big names, but he's in legal trouble, or as much news, making much news out of the ring as he is in the ring. Where does he fall there?
All right, we got to take our last break. You're listening to MMA Junkie Radio on Fight Nation Channel 93. When we come back, we will be talking to Frank Mir, former UFC heavyweight champion, who now is going to dabble in a new career. His fighting career isn't done, but I saw an announcement this past weekend. He's getting into another field. We'll talk about that with him when we come back.
This one's George, and that one's Goes. Now, feel their wrath.
Fantasy Sports Radio is helping you win no matter what sport you follow. Listen for picks and advice to fill out your NCAA tournament bracket and hear the best fantasy baseball analysts giving you draft strategy, player projections, and interviews with the people closest to the game. Plus, fantasy football talk every morning with the guru, John Hansen, weekdays at 7 Eastern. It's all happening on Fantasy Sports Radio, Sirius 210, XM87, and streaming on your phone and at home on Sirius XM connected devices and speakers. All right, our next guest is Frank Mir, former UFC heavyweight champion, current Bellator heavyweight. By the way, I think he's going to dabble in a new career this past weekend. If you follow him on Twitter like I do, I was checking it out at the Frank Mir Truth Sports. Let's talk about that. What's up, Frank? Welcome back to MMA Junkie Radio.
Hey, it's good, man. How's it going?
Good, man. Thanks for joining us here. Got Goes and Dan with me, and of course your partner from the Phone Boost Fighting podcast, Richard Hunter, as well. So, Truth Sports, how long has that one been simmering, and how excited are you about this new venture where you're going to be managing? Is it going to be fighters or anybody in relation to the sport of mixed martial arts, or even outside?
Well, right now just fighters, just because that's obviously where my level of experience comes from. And as far as it's been something I've always had in the back of my mind, just because I've seen so many people get management fighters, and it always just feels like they're in it for the wrong reasons. You know, they get you to sign a contract, they get you a couple fight deal, and also they disappear. They expect a percentage of what you make per fight, but what are they really honestly doing for you as far as helping to push your career, help you out, and assist you to make it to where you can, have your best performance possible when you step in that night to the fight. And so, the last couple of years I've always been verbal about giving advice in the gym, wherever, for free, just sit there and help guys out. And I've just kind of thought about it as a way of trying to take more of a direct approach, where instead of just kind of pointing guys in the right direction, actually grabbing them by the hand and walking them over.
And are you ready to be that guy that because there are a lot of times when the fighter leans on the agent / manager, different times of the day or night, whether it's advice or something's just, on fight week, so many things can happen. Do you expect to be hands-on, or do you plan on building a team that's going to help you, and are you going to be like more of a figurehead?
No, both. I mean, obviously, there's areas as far as social media, for example, is one that that's not my strong suit. And so, when the fighters come to us and they need to run the program or ask some questions on why they're not, being, relative on their Twitter, hopefully I'll have someone part of my crew that, will take the lead on that. But when it comes to other aspects of the sport, on what fights to pick, on why to pick the fight, I have first-hand experience. I think it weighs more. I think it stands, not that it's necessary to have experience in the topic, but I think someone respects you more and saying, hey, look, I think you should do this because I did or did not do this, and these are the circumstances, this is the result of the decision I made. Because I didn't choose this path, this is what I ran into, this is why I want you to do this. This is why I think this is a good idea. Or vice versa, I did this, and this was something that was a positive for me, and this is why I think you should also do it. So I think that was where I'll draw most my strength from, where I could be the most benefit to the fighter.
Frank, let me jump in here for a second. We can hear you. We were able to understand everything, but there are times when you're getting a little bit choppy. Is there a better spot where you can take the next few questions?
Give me a second because I'm half naked at the gym.
Let's FaceTime.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll send it over to the guys in Vegas, but hopefully it doesn't get too choppy. Go ahead, Goes. What do you have for Frank?
Frank, my question for you is the following. Can you give us an example of a model fighter, somebody that you just think would be great for you to manage and you would want all your other clients to be kind of like this person? And then can you give us an example of someone that you feel like maybe you can turn this person around? And not saying that they're not being managed properly, you just see that they have more potential.
Let's see. Somebody that I think that is doing everything right. I think it's an aspect does everything right. I think he's somebody who's very successful inside of the arena. As a fighter, but he stays very active and very relevant when he's not fighting. I think that's a lot of problems and mistakes that fighters sometimes do. And that is an example of when I can tell somebody mistakes I've made in my career. In the past, I felt that, oh, I'm a fighter, that's all that matters. But I didn't want to do anything in between fights to keep myself relevant or keep my name out there. And at the end of the day, if you're fighting and you want to provide for your family and not take away from your training by having a secondary job, those are the little things that matter in the big picture of it. You know, so that's an example of, you know, again, of a mistake that I made, that I see how I can tell somebody, hey, don't do it my way. It actually hurt me in the long run.
You know, Frank, I like that when you talk about. I was just going to say, as far as imparting your knowledge and mistakes and being able to parlay, impart that to somebody. I'm glad you mentioned that, because when I go back to watch WEC footage, which is, I have far less reason to go back these days, but when I do, one of my favorite parts is listening to your commentary. And I know you've done commentary work with ACB and other organizations since then, but I've always thought, that you do a great job first and foremost, but you also provide references, whether it's your own or other fights, so that, whoever you're speaking to, whether the audience or someone in particular, they can kind of better grasp that. So I guess let me ask you, when researching, clients in the future, do you think you'll be going about it maybe like you'd go about fight analysis, by maybe, popping in a couple of their fights and maybe starting from there? How do you go about that?
No, I think that's exactly how you do it. I think that, every fighter, it's no such thing as a bad fighter. Every fighter will have strengths and weaknesses. I think it's you as a manager to be able to place him in the best position possible to be successful. When it comes to matches, when it comes to incentives, when it comes to even what arenas that you put the guy in. There might be, an organization the guy wants to fight in as a case. And your client might be one phenomenal striker, but hey, this organization over here, while you're building up your wrestling, they're fighting in a boxing ring. Wrestling doesn't dominate as much in the boxing ring. While your wrestling skills are catching up, why don't we fight over here? So I think it's little things like that sometimes managers don't look at, because they themselves aren't fighters. But how many managers do you know of that have actually know how to fight, that know anything about the sport besides what anybody would know watching it enough times? And I think it's those intricate little details that sometimes could be the difference. I mean, life's a battle of inches, and I think that's one area that I can actually, really focus on.
Frank, Richard.
All right.
Richard,
go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, Richard Hunter here with Phone Booth Fighting. What is going to be the one thing when you sit down to negotiate with a promoter that, as a having the being a fighter yourself, that you're going to the one they're going to try to pull over on the fighter that's the oldest trick in the book, the one that you're going to see coming a mile away, that you're going to be like, no, I know exactly what you're trying to do, and you're not going to be able to pull that one over on me. Anything come to mind from past mistakes, or at least seeing other fighters have it happen to them?
Instantaneously, the first thing that comes to mind is that promoters are very good at making you feel like you're not worth anything. But they're doing you a favor by you showing up. And now that I've been on the other side of it, not only as I've been as a fighter, but now, especially, the ATB so much involved in the promotion side of the organization, being very close to guys and matchmakers, watch how much of a commodity fighters are, how desperately that they're needed. It's not that we need the promoters need the fighters. And I think that promoters, especially like the UFC in general, are extremely good at making you feel as the fighter that, look, hey man, this is what we're going to give you, and you should actually fucking feel happy that we're willing to give you this much, because you're not even worth that. Be happy with it, go home. And that's something that I'll laugh at instantly. Be like, no, this is, I know how much you need those guys. I know that that's the product. You can't sit there and go, yeah, I want to be a car salesman, but we don't need cars. Well, without the car, there's no salesman. Without the fighter, there's no promotion.
I don't know if, Frank, you were prepared to make the announcement today on the air or not, but Frank's actually signed his first fighter under his new management company, and it's me. I don't know that a lot of new management companies would be automatically going after an 0-1 amateur fighter, especially at the advanced age of 48. But I think that speaks to your vision, Frank, and I wanted to just give you a second to talk about that and kind of ask you how you see guiding my career moving forward.
Well, I think that, sometimes you got to take risks. Sometimes things on paper don't always add up to decisions. But when you see something, sometimes you just got to go with your gut.
All right. Well, that sounds like a very concise vision.
Tell the promotion.
And hey, look, if I can sell you the fighter, everybody will come my way.
He'll have to tell the promotion. Make sure post weigh-in that there's a vegan spread as well for my guy.
That's right.
I think what Frank's going to do is he's going to draw the line at any of my opponents being over 6'5". I think that's going to be the first commitment we're going to make. Yeah.
Yeah, that's we wanted to get that when I saw how Richard was matched up in his last fight. I'm like, geez, buddy, what are you doing here? You need someone looking out for you.
Yeah, I need somebody looking out for me.
All right. Well, listen, Frank, whenever you get back from Canada, we'd love to have you and Richard come back and do a co-host run with us. You seem to be doing a lot. I know your pro MMA career isn't over. I'm seeing that pro wrestling, there might be a little bit of that. We've seen you do some submission wrestling late last year, so you're always keeping busy. So please come back to the studio sometime soon. We'd love to do a little bit more and see how things are going with Truth Fights. But we appreciate your time right now, man.
I appreciate it, man. I'll see you guys soon.
Okay, we'll see you. All right, folks, keep an eye on Truth Sports, not Truth Fights, and follow Frank on Twitter at @TheFrankMeir. So, Richard, you got to get him on Verizon or something.
Yeah, I know. I might.
Cricket's not working out.
If he's going to be my agent, we've got to have a good cell phone connection there. Yeah.
I was gonna say.
Luckily, we were able to. We're veterans. We could kind of power through it a little bit, but it was right at the.
As my agent, I'm going to require that he have his cell phone in his hand at all times. Like he's always ready to cut some big deal, which I notice a lot of agents do. Mm-hmm. The only thing, he already has it in his hand. It's just that he's always playing Clash of Clans on it. And I think that's going to be a bad look, so I'm going to ask him not to do. I don't know how many demands I can make, though. I mean, for right now, I'm the top client, but that ain't going to last very long.
And also, no FaceTime while he's getting changed. That could intimidate the clients in a number of ways. You might be sending the wrong message.
Good point, Dan.
Good thing we didn't.
Not the first hand you want to extend.
I imagine Bella is going to be his first client, right? Or
she's
still a few years away from.
She's probably a few years away, but she will quickly ascend to the top of the priority list, no doubt. But at that point, I'll probably be retired. I only see myself in the fight game another maybe 18 months. Yeah.
All right. Well, we have to get on out of here. Again, keep it locked on MMA Junkie throughout because the guys did a really, really kick-ass job out there. Let me see. I believe it was Abby, Simon. So Abby Subhan, Simon Head, John Morgan, and I believe they said there was a cameraman. Was that a gentleman named Per from Holland?
Yeah, I think we've had him a couple times there working with us.
Yeah. So great job. That was a really, really great foursome out there. And, of course, back home, the guys hustling. We're going to be talking a little bit more this week about a newest edition that we have on MMA Junkie. So keep it locked on MMA Junkie. And go to the front page to find out more news on the UFC, their exclusive deal with ESPN Plus when it comes to the pay-per-view game. If you are an Americano and you order yourself some pay-per-views, well, guess what? You're going to be ordering them through ESPN Plus. You're going to save $5, but there's a lot more to unpack there. For Richard and Dan and Josh and Goes, I'm George. Have a nice day. Go out there and be a champion.